E36 Fanatics, Steven here. Today I'm doing a front brake job on my Ford Ranger. On these vehicles, this is a 1994. One thing to remember, the 90s was kind of a transition period for a lot of Fords. The rear actually has drum brakes, and the front has regular disc brake pads. Something odd about these brakes is these older model Fords, they don't actually have brake caliper bolts that hold the caliper in. They have these slider pins that you have to actually hammer out. And they got one at the top right here, and then one at the bottom down here. So what I'm gonna do is I just take a little penetrating oil, just as they slide out nicely. I take my rubber mallet hammer. You don't need much force. So once you get those two clips out, you can remove your brake caliper. Now remember, you never want the caliper to just hang by the brake hose. It's an easy way to break your hose. So, especially on an older truck like this. Here's my first one. Here's my second one. See how rusted these brakes are? These have been here for a very long time. They're just really rusted up. I'm gonna really shoot the whole brake assembly and the rotor with brake parts cleaner to really get it cleaned up. Now at this point, you're almost ready to put your new brake pads on. However, you want to take a look at your rotor and you want to inspect it and make sure that it's in pretty good shape. So you can run your finger along it, see how grooved up it is. And a lot of the times because a lot of DIY guys replace their brake pads without replacing the rotors. So what will happen is over time they'll develop a big lip on the outer edge of the rotor. And typically that's a good sign that's about time to replace your rotor. And it's really not difficult at all to pull the rotor off anyways. And now I've got I got some brake parts cleaner, and now I'm just gonna spritz all of this. I'm just gonna really spritz the caliper and get a lot of this gunk out. And this brake parts cleaner, it dries really fast too, which is nice. Dries within a few minutes. And I'm going to go ahead and use it on the clips as well, because I'm going to reuse these. Now if you have a wire brush, you're going to want to get into the grooves here and just scrape them up a little bit with your wire brush. Okay, so at this point you're going to want to go ahead and compress your piston, which is this right here. You're going to want to force it back so you can make some room to actually put your to fit your brake pads in and onto the rotor. Because right now the piston is way out and it's set up for these brake pads, but the new brake pads are much thicker, so you have to press in the piston to provide some space for it. Now there's two ways to press in your piston and prevent it from busting through the brake fluid reservoir, because when you're compressing this piston, you're forcing the brake fluid back up through the line. So the way I like to do is I like to actually open the bleeder valve while I'm compressing it to let some of that fluid out through the bleeder valve. And then before I take the clamp off, I close the bleeder valve back up to prevent any air from getting in. So another way some of my buddies like doing it is they actually open up the brake reservoir in the engine bay. What I'm doing here is I'm using an old brake pad, the one I just removed, to actually press in the piston. And this gives it a more uniform kind of pressing onto the piston instead of just using my my brake press tool and focusing on one small area of the piston. Okay, so I decided to go ahead and just open up the brake fluid reservoir. This is a 94 truck, so sometimes this bleeder valve gets really stuck there, and I didn't want to risk tearing up my my brake line and having to do more work. So I just went ahead and opened it up. Now, as you can see, I got my piston compressed well. Another thing you're going to want to do, you're going to want to use some synthetic brake grease. And basically what that does is it helps with when these brake parts vibrate a lot, they tend to cause squealing. So this kind of muffles the sound of your brakes. And you're going to basically want to do it wherever your brakes are coming into contact with the caliper. So at this point, I've got both brakes in and the caliper back on. Now I'm putting back in the clip. And you just want to hit it back far enough until it catches on the tabs on either side. Once it does that, it's locked in place. And you'll hear it if you hit it enough, it'll just stop. So at this point, I've got everything back in place. Hey viewers, you're gonna want to pump your brakes afterwards, because remember when you had to press your piston in on your brake caliper, well, the piston is still set to the older brakes. So if you went straight out and drove right now, you'd be in trouble because your piston wouldn't actually make contact with your brakes. You start your vehicle, and you just basically what I do is you pump it. So I'll put it in reverse and drive, and I'll just pump it 3 times. So press it all the way in, and then I brake hard, like 3 times. And after a few times, your brakes will be reset and you'll be good to go.